How many hours did I sleep? How many hours did I sleep? I'm feeling lightheaded. My heart's feeling a little lightheaded. I'm feeling lightheaded. I don't feel good. My heart's beating. I don't know if I feel all right. Do I feel all right? I think I feel all right. I feel like I'm gonna pass out. I need to sit down. I'm okay. Yeah, I feel all right. No, I feel fine. I don't know if I should take my meds. I should take my meds. Should I take my meds today? The medicine's working. How do I know if the medicine's working? I don't know if should I take meds today? Maybe my heart. My heart is my thyroid. Really hurting right now. I hope it's not Ebola. What if it's Ebola? I was on a plane recently. I hope it's not Ebola. Don't look up the symptoms. I need to look up the symptoms. What's going on? I need to take my temperature. Okay. You're fine. Okay. So my fever over 100. If it's over 100, that's not good. If it's over 100, I'm going to the emergency room. What's my pulse? What's my blood pressure? Check my blood pressure right now. I think I'm sick. My blood pressure's high. My blood pressure feels high. My blood pressure feels really high. I'm freaking out. This is a heart attack. This is a heart attack. My heart is racing right now. My heart is racing. Okay. Relax. Remember the breath. Focus on the breath. You'll be fine. It's just anxiety. Nothing ever happens. It's just anxiety.
Over 40 million Americans suffer from mental disorders that have anxiety as a component, and these disorders often dominate their lives. Symptoms can range from extreme worry and fear to phobias and torturous panic attacks. What ties many of these people together is their mental anguish and fervent hope of getting better. These disorders are treatable, and the vast majority of people who have them can be helped.
I'm just feeling so down about myself right now. I can't help but to really think about this and think about my life and how I don't have a life anymore. Like, why would anybody ever want to be with me? I can't do anything. I wouldn't even want to be with me.
People have no idea what this even is. Everybody knows what every disease and everything is except this. My anxiety started when I was 14 years old. I had gone to the mall with my girlfriends, everything was fine. I walked into a store and I felt like the store was closing in on me. I started sweating profusely, my heart was pounding, and I didn't know what was going on, so I started running. I was screaming to my sister, "You need to help me, I don't know what's going on." I had my first panic attack, and that's when everything went downhill. It progressed in junior high. I started noticing these feelings happening all the time, and I couldn't control them, and I would end up in the nurse's office. So I felt really, really awful about myself for a really long time. You live in fear, and people don't understand what you're going through. Oh, I'm sorry. And I lost everybody that I ever loved left me because they thought I was crazy. You're literally hitting rock bottom. It's the point where you wake up in the morning and you don't want to be here anymore at all. And then you just have to, I kept praying and praying and praying that something was gonna save me, whether it was gonna be God or whether it was gonna be a job or something was gonna save me. And then one day I woke up and I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to pull myself together, and that's when YouTube saved my life. I didn't have any friends, I didn't have, my family didn't understand, so I started speaking to a camera.
I'm posting this video right now, not to make anybody upset, but to document how bad this is. I can never describe to you how painful it is to have this.
Just speaking to the camera and being able to say how I felt every single day really helped, and the amount of comments and emails and messages that I was getting of people saying that I wasn't alone and that they felt the same way, nobody understood, and just speaking to them every day. And
I used to be so much fun, and I used to want to go out all the time and have such a drive to like be near people, and I don't want to be near anybody anymore. I don't want anybody to see me how I am now. The world of a panic disorder that's killing me.
This is from David Barlow, who is an anxiety expert. Anxiety kills relatively few people, but many more would welcome death as an alternative to the paralysis and suffering resulting from anxiety in its severe forms. Without anxiety, we would probably expire because, we would play on the edge of cliffs and fall off. We would have no sense of what actually threatens us. If you or I were being confronted with a lion or a mugger, or we were taking a big test that was going to determine our professional fate, it is actually normal and probably adaptive to be anxious. There's a lot of evidence that actually a little bit of anxiety and physiological arousal and excitement will actually enhance your performance. If you can harness that in the right way and have the right environment, you'll actually thrive and have the potential to become an effective leader. Abnormal anxiety or neurotic anxiety is anxiety that is either completely irrational, there's no logical trigger for it, or even if there is some legitimate fearful trigger, the response is out of proportion. Where it becomes a clinical problem or a pathology or abnormal is if the anxiety overwhelms and renders you unable to perform to the best of your ability, or unable to perform at all, or leads to avoidance or running away or freezing or having panic attacks. And if that's a chronic thing, that's when you would benefit from treatment. Starting when I was probably 2 or 3 years old, I had acute separation anxiety. Anytime I was apart from my parents, I was convinced that they had died or had abandoned me. When I went on a trip with my family to Europe, which even at age 11, I was afraid of flying, I was afraid of getting sick, I was afraid of getting sick from the thin atmosphere we were in Switzerland, worrying about the food in Switzerland, worrying about getting food poison. I also have a phobia of cheese, and you're traveling through Switzerland and Italy, much of what they're offering you to eat has cheese in it. This entire trip, I think I ate nothing but bread. I also have fear of heights, fear of flying, agoraphobia, which is being far from home, fear of fainting. I've been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, which is just a propensity to worry excessively, mild social phobia, and then panic disorder, which is, the propensity to have panic attacks. My longest standing phobia, starting when I was about 6 years old, is what's known as a metaphobia, which is the acute pathological fear of vomiting. I carry with me at all times Dramamine. I will carry Pepto-Bismol. I'll carry, this is a bag for my dog, but I figure, like, in case I get sick, I can use this. The fear of vomiting sort of dominates my life. I think about it anywhere from 5 times a day to more or less constantly, even though there's not a realistic likelihood, given that I've now gone 30 plus years without doing so. It's not rational. I recognize that. And I sometimes think, on the one hand, I've been able to manage this for now 30, 40 years, and I've managed to maintain a professional career. And yet, if the idea that I could be liberated from this fear and not have to think about this, who knows what I could have done with all that extra emotional, mental space. I could have written a novel or taught myself the violin or just been more peaceful.
All right, this is actually what my mother calls my OCD paraphernalia. These are the gloves that I have in right now. They're actually vinyl. These are the ones that I usually wear around the house. They're cheaper, but they're really big on me, so I can't wear them outside. And they're a little bit thinner, so I feel safer with the vinyl gloves on.
This all started when she was 17, almost 18.
One day, she couldn't touch things, and the next day, she went out and bought pairs of gloves and started wearing them.
I'm disabled. I have severe OCD. I have a fear of things. I also have a disgust of things, overwhelming disgust for germs. I lather up, kind of cover everything, And I go, my nails, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I count 20 seconds. And 2, 1,000, like that, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000. I have a little bit of a concentration problem. So I lose count, then I have to start over. Like now, I can't talk to you and count, so now I have to start over.
It's the thoughts that are going through their mind. I mean, how they can even think about ordinary, everyday things with these thoughts just over and 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 over.
I'd be very careful to not let the water go over the soap line, or the germs on my arm will run down into my hands. And the water can get pretty hot. You can see my hands are really hot. It's hard. It's hard. See, I just accidentally touched my sweatshirt, so we get to do it again. To me, it's all logical and makes sense, because I can say there are germs out there, you know, and I'm avoiding them by doing these rituals, but germs are bad. You know, shouldn't everybody be wearing gloves? Okay, now I dry them off. And I put on a bunch of this. And then I put the gloves on. That way no bacteria is stuck inside the gloves, because I've got all that hand sanitizer in there. And that's the glove ritual.
What OCD does is sort of forces you to focus on the 1% possibility that your world will be destroyed. And that 1% then becomes your whole world. The cycle of OCD begins when the person with OCD experiences what are called intrusive thoughts. These are painful and unwanted thoughts or images or ideas, and they can arise at any time for any reason or no reason at all. So I can just give you an example. Walk out the house, lock the door, walk away. Maybe I'm half a block away or a block away, and I think, did I lock the door? And all of a sudden I'm not sure. And I begin to think about all the terrible things that could happen if I didn't lock the door. You know, a robber could come in, they could hurt, the people that I love, they could steal the things that are important to me, and on and on and on. And soon enough, this tension and this fear and this anxiety builds up to a point where I start to think, well, why don't you just go back and lock the door or check? The feelings in that situation, for example, can get so intense that all of a sudden it starts to feel really logical. Oh, sure, I'll just go back. Because even if I am, in the long term strengthening my OCD, right now things suck so much that that it's worth it. So you walk back and you lock the door again, and it's almost always locked. And then you walk away, and all of a sudden you have this thought, well, in jiggering the door, did I inadvertently unlock it? This sort of ping-ponging back between options, this endless debating, is itself a kind of compulsive response to the fear of the situation.
Okay. In the mornings is when I do the kitchen. I clean and disinfect the kitchen, and I won't want to touch the food directly, so I'll use Clorox wipes, and everything I disinfect with a Clorox wipe takes 30 seconds for it to disinfect, and then I still can't touch it. Okay.
Just a bowl of dry cereal and coffee can take her probably an hour to prepare. There's a fine line between enabling her and supporting her. The things that I do, there's just no way she could exist if I didn't do them for her.
I spend every waking moment with the intrusive thoughts, the obsessive thoughts, and the rituals. I can't step on cracks. If I follow all my rituals, I'll be safe. And the more rigid that I am, the safer I am. There's an armchair in the other room, and I'm pretty much in that armchair for the rest of the day. The reason why I'm in my pajamas is because I don't want my street clothes to get this chair dirty. This is kind of my sanctuary, where I don't have to wear gloves. And this, I know this is clean. Oh no. I just touched my face with the blanket. So just a second. I have to go into the bathroom.
She has no relief at all. You know, it separates her from having a normal life and being with people and friends. I just want people to understand the pain that someone with OCD goes through in their mind. It just breaks your heart to know your child is that deeply unhappy.
I mean, I'm not delusional. Most of the time, I know it's not logical, but it's hard to take a step back and say, this doesn't make sense. Because when you're in the moment and you're having the intrusive thought, or you're feeling the fear, you know, you want to do whatever it takes to make yourself feel safe.
As humans, you know, once we reach adolescence, if not before, we are aware that we have limited existences on this earth, that our senses of self, our souls, our beings are going to expire. That is profoundly anxiety-inducing.
I have a fear of death, of dying. As an anxiety sufferer, you always think of what's around the corner. For me, it's really the health issue. I have probably made a dozen plus trips to the ER. My medical file is probably like this thick. I thought I suffered from brain tumor. I thought I had brain cancer for a while, and that's because my left eye for some reason hurts. Sometimes I think I have diabetes. Sometimes I think I'm gonna have a stroke. My mother died of cancer, so that's a fear. I thought I had MS for a while because I read about MS and I thought, oh, I have all those symptoms. I've had a sore muscle right here. I don't know why. My husband's like, why is that sore? And then it gets me all paranoid going, well, what do you mean, why is it sore? I don't know why it's sore. I don't know what I did. Is there something wrong with me? So I thought I had hypothyroidism. I thought I had hyperthyroidism. I thought I had deep vein thrombosis. I do exhaustive research on the internet about several different conditions that I think I may have. And you end up getting sucked in, reading about all the different symptoms. Today I was looking up resting heart rate. I probably spent about 45 minutes looking through my resting heart rate numbers from last night. I usually text one of my family members because I'm worried that something might happen to me, so I want them to know what I'm going through in case they don't hear from me again. When you have health-induced anxiety, you start distrusting people, doctors. When they tell me that everything's fine, I don't believe them. I had a doctor one time tell me, it was a cardiologist actually, he was reading my EKG and told me, swore up and down, nothing is wrong with you. I hate how the Army gives all these EKGs because it causes people to unnecessarily worry and for us to give unnecessary tests. Like an angiogram is not the safest test in the world to take. And he said, be careful what you wish for, because there's probably a higher probability of something happening to you during one of these tests than going through them at all anyway. But I went through it because I really thought there was legitimately something wrong with me. My immediate family members have always been like, you need professional help, and I do have professional help, but it's just constant. It doesn't matter if I see a therapist weekly or bi-weekly. I wish I could be like what I call others, the others out there in the world who, my sister lives this philosophy, well, if something happens, something happens. I don't know what that feels like. The irony with what I have is that when I'm faced with an actual harrowing situation, whether it's when I was downrange deployed in a precarious situation or my life was in danger, I was fine. I've been to Iraq, I've been to Afghanistan, I go all over Central and South America. When faced with actual life and death situations, I don't have the fear.
In the war situation, you're so high on adrenaline that you don't focus on yourself. I didn't focus on me. My focus then was just staying alive. I didn't have any feeling when I was there. I didn't start feeling till I came home. I retired from the Army as a vehicle mechanic, and I was a staff sergeant when I retired. I was diagnosed with PTSD after I came to the VA. Going to Iraq, Kosovo, Macedonia, Bosnia, and all these places where you see folks in harm's way, and you witness that, you know, from decapitations to, you know, bodies charred to our own soldiers in body bags, and just being around people that you might have had breakfast with that morning, and then by dinner say, oh, there was a bombing and we lost this Humvee. That trauma is relevant to me. I had just came back from my last deployment. I was home maybe a good week, and I was staying up and I was baking. I couldn't sleep. I would stay up days on end and would bake cakes, cookies, and pancakes and whatnot. And I didn't understand why couldn't I sleep. And I noticed that my oldest child was a little bit more clingy than I would think. And I said, oh, maybe because we had been away so long. And I said, I think we might need to get some help. But I thought for the children first. Then I said, well, no, maybe I should talk to somebody too, because I'm not sleeping. Something is going on. Just getting up, it was just too much. Actually getting out of my bed just to go take a shower just was too much. I just couldn't do it. I didn't even go to work. I was out of work for a couple months behind that.
Anxiety and depression often occur together. Were you ever depressed?
I just felt broken. It can vary from sweats at night. It can be little triggers from what someone might say or smell or touch. Somebody has PTSD. Something so small, being in a crowded room, can make you think that you were in a marketplace back in Iraq, that you were being shot at. Like, for instance, Black Friday shopping. I love to go shopping, but I was just so feeling, I'm gonna be so overwhelmed with the crowds, gonna be so many people, and then I started feeling anxious, so I didn't end up going. I'm psyching myself out of doing some of the fun things that I would like to do.
I tell my daughter that I have anxiety. She knows that I didn't go to the fair this year or any other year because I become over-worried and very uncomfortable. She understands that, so I feel like she's very supportive. I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. The best way I can put it is worry all the time. I'm anxious about everyday life situations. I worry about if I'm an effective therapist. I worry if I'm a good mom to my 8-year-old. I worry if I'm a good enough wife. I will over-worry and overthink about things that for most people, they might feel a little bit anxious about it or a little bit worried, where for me, my mind goes to catastrophic. Like, I have thoughts if, for example, I drop my daughter off at camp. What if there's an earthquake and she can't get out of the building? It's not like a fleeting thought or a passing feeling. It stays with me all day long, into the point when I'm laying down in bed. Instead of just being able to fall asleep, I ruminate in my head, not only about possible future things that might happen, I worry about in my head what happened that day or the day before and how I could have done it differently or better, and that keeps me awake at night. It can take up to a couple days to what I would consider snapping out of it. And I think to myself, gosh, what the heck did I do the last 2 days? Like, I must have just missed 2 days of my life.
Oh, no problem.
I am a big believer in exercise. I feel like when I don't exercise, my anxiety is more heightened and I worry more. If there was nobody in that gym and it was empty, I would go every day for 2 hours. It's driving there. It's kind of a congested area, finding a place to park. There's a lot of people. And then going into the gym, I get anxious about what do I look like? I must look like a fool here. What am I doing? I'm the most out of shape person in here. So I take it in steps. So, okay, just get in the car. Okay, now start the car. Now get in the car and just drive in the parking lot. But okay, so as long as I'm here, I'm gonna go in. And I walk in, I put my headphones on, I've got some nice music, and I just kind of go up my thing, and I try really hard to keep those irrational thoughts at bay.
So, this morning I woke up, and of course, anxiety is protruding through my body, through my veins, my heart is freaking pounding. And then I was like, you know what? Go to the bank right now. Go get in the car and go try to go to the bank. The bank is literally 2 blocks away from my house. 2. Boom, and you're there. But then there's a line, and I don't want to get stuck on the line because then I'm going to feel like I'm stuck there permanently and I can't get out. So I drove to the bank, drove back home, drove to the bank again, drove back home. I felt like I couldn't breathe and my heart is pounding and I'm like, something awful is gonna happen to me, and all the bullshit that we make up. I am most days severely agoraphobic. I'm really, really afraid to leave the house and I never know why. I have this weird feeling in my body that's indescribable and terrifying. I am terrified of driving. Terrified. I can't even go like 3 blocks without having a panic attack. My life basically is in a 2-mile radius right now. I put myself in this bubble that's not real. Panic is not, like, your sensations are real, but like everything that's going on in your head is all self-made. When you have a panic disorder, you're always in here.
Imagine you're walking out at night and somebody pulls a gun to your head. I feel that when I'm speaking with someone. So I think life should be about living your dream. And if you have anxiety, you're trying to get through the day. You're not thinking about, whatever, buying your dream house, getting this dream job, or making #1 sales, or whatever it might be. I grew up in Hinsdale, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago. I had a lot of friends. I was on all the sports teams. I had a great life. But it was really that day of my first panic attack that everything changed. I was 19 years old, and I was a sophomore in college, and everything's going great. And I was talking to a guy that I was becoming friends with, and all of a sudden, I had my first panic attack. It was, get the heck out of here. I had to leave, I had to escape. If I stayed in it, a couple seconds longer, I thought I would just go completely crazy. I had no idea what was happening to me. Terrorized. Dropped out of all the classes where I had to talk, where I had to speak to anybody. I didn't go to class, I didn't leave my dorm room for 3.5 months, contemplating how am I gonna, live. I gave up a lot. I didn't play basketball, I didn't go to class. I didn't have any friends. I avoided everything. And the more I avoided, the illness got worse and worse and worse. After about 3.5 weeks of hiding, my mom called, and she had kept calling, and I picked up the phone and broke down crying, just fell on the floor. And as I, began to describe the symptoms, she said, you know what, you might be having panic attacks. It helped enormously just to understand that I wasn't alone in this.
There are different kinds of anxieties. Social anxiety disorder, a phobia of being out and about, especially in public arenas. Generalized anxiety disorder. The most common is really just excessive worry about normal things. Obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD, and post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, are no longer in the anxiety disorders category, but still have anxiety as a major component. Panic disorder is another anxiety disorder, has to do with people having profound symptoms of anxiety without necessarily having an outside trigger.
When I go through a panic attack, I think I'm dying. I'll start feeling a little strange. Usually I feel a little dizzy.
I'm feeling like everything is sort of swimming around me. The furniture is starting to swirl around. I'm feeling nauseous. I'm feeling like you're about to pass out.
Racing heart, fear in the pit of your stomach, shortness of breath.
The panic attack feels Very much like a heart attack. My heart begins to race so fast I can actually look down and see my shirt moving.
Like I'm gonna have a nervous breakdown. Like my whole world is gonna fall apart.
Well, what if it's not a panic attack and I actually feel really dizzy and my face is going numb and maybe I'm having a stroke or maybe I'm gonna get sick and I'm thinking, no, you're just fine, take some deep breaths, I'm feeling better, and then suddenly I'll have a twinge of faintness or of nausea and I'm thinking, oh my God, just because the previous 7,865 times when it really was a panic attack, why am I so cocky to think that the 7,566th time will also be a panic attack? Maybe this is really it. I'm like, I gotta get out of here.
Just get out of there as fast as I can.
I need to get up and escape, and I usually go for a walk if I'm at work, or I'll go to my bedroom if I'm at home. A bathroom at work too. I've gone to the bathroom and sat in a bathroom stall for quite a while.
The most acute phase is fortunately not much longer than 10 minutes, but they can stretch on if I don't get them under control or treat them for hours, which is awful.
For some reason, I'm having trouble breathing. It's typically a normal side effect of, anxiety, and when you're having a panic attack, which are things that I typically have on a weekly basis, and I have shortness of breath. My hands are really tingly, my toes are tingly, I'm having the sensation that I'm going to faint, and I can't get a deep breath. My medicine is basically starting to kick in, and I'm getting really tired. It seems like everywhere I go, I have to carry my medicine around and always think about what happens if I have a panic attack here. Will I be able to, get to a bed, or will there be someone that will be able to help me? I don't want to have to live my whole life dealing with this.
There were times when I definitely thought about suicide. I was stuck at the train tracks and I was watching them go by, and it was a realistic thought. I said, look, I'm not gonna be able to beat this thing. I can't get out of it. There's no future beyond this.
3 years ago, I saved up like $15,000 to pay for my funeral. I didn't want to be here anymore. And I wrote all my letters to everybody, to my mom and to my sister and everybody, just saying that I hope that they would understand that this is no life for anybody to live. Like, it's just not fair. And I think suicide is the most selfish thing that anybody can ever do to anybody in life. But when you are constantly suffering and you can't eat, you can't sleep, you feel sick all the time, and you're terrified as if someone's holding a gun in your mouth and you have no explanation why, I just said, okay, I'm gonna give it a few more days. In a few more days, I ended up having an okay moment.
There's never, ever a reason that great that you need to take your own life. There's always someone you can reach out for help for.
I've tried over, now 40 years, legions of methods to overcome my anxiety.
I've tried many things to manage my anxiety, up to and including some maladaptive behaviors. I took to alcohol, drinking heavily. Gosh, I'm having a stressful day, I'm gonna go drink a bottle of wine, it'll make me feel better. That doesn't work as well, and it's certainly not healthy. I do see a therapist who is experienced in cognitive behavioral therapy. CBT is a form of therapy that helps you connect your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors. So many times, oftentimes with anxiety and depression, we have these negative thoughts that repeat over and over again. And being able to catch the thought, sit with it, and then move on to something else.
If I am underslept or overwhelmed by stress, that is much more likely to sort of wear my sort of coping mechanisms thinner, and I'm more likely to be subject to anxiety then.
Anxiety can be so exhausting. Do naps help you?
Oh yeah. There was a plane flight I remember, unfortunately, quite vividly. I was running back and forth to the restroom, and I'm sitting there, clutching the armrest, and I'm sweating, and I'm miserable, and I just wanted to end. And finally, I started to realize, took so much energy to be so anxious that I started to feel tired. I was like, if I could just fall asleep. And then I did fall asleep. And the fascinating thing is, I was probably asleep for 25 minutes, and I wake up and I feel completely fine. I remember sitting there thinking, this is amazing. Here I am, I'm in the same situation I was 25 minutes ago, and yet my state of mind is so different. And somehow, the act of falling asleep and calming my physiology, changes your thought process. And this is one of the fascinating things about anxiety and the interaction between mind and body, and how calming the body can calm the mind.
I began doing yoga. There's a lot of breath work in that. There's an element of meditation. The biggest benefit was feeling relaxed while doing yoga. It was one of the few things that I could do where my mind wasn't totally racing. A good amount of being social and around friends helps me too, as well as diet. I love the arts, more about process than product, but the value of that art and being able to express yourself on paper is another important thing for me. And spending time with family. I feel like I have a big toolbox, and the direction I'm taking is more about a whole treatment perspective as opposed to just popping a pill.
In 2000, I started going on medication for my anxiety. At first, it made me worse, and then it made me a little bit better. But I don't like to be dependent on medication, so it took a long time to withdraw from that medication. So I was off medication for a few months. I thought I could tough it out, and that's when I broke down and realized that I probably needed something. So the next day I got on some other medication that I felt more comfortable with.
I went to spirituality groups, and I still get to talk to a chaplain one-on-one. So mental health and the spiritual side of the house made it better for myself.
Having a mission life, for many people, feeling like they have a higher calling, feeling religious belief.
Support groups, art therapy, stress therapy, anger management.
Hypnotism, talk therapy, group therapy, family therapy, EMDR, which is eye movement rapid desensitization or something like that. Family systems therapy, energy therapy, yoga, looking at self-help videos that I order off late night infomercials. There are certain things that have helped. Cognitive behavioral therapy, exposing yourself to the thing that makes you afraid. If you have, say, a fear of heights, you work with a therapist to go to higher and higher floors of a building or to balconies and look out, and you look over the edge of the balcony and experience the anxiety and learn that you can handle it and it's not going to overwhelm you.
How you treat OCD is with exposure response prevention.
Maybelline.
So that's what we did with the cats.
Of course, she won't when you...
First, I pet them, immediately wash my hands. And then we moved to delaying the time between I touched them and washed my hands. And eventually I got to the point where I could pet them. And it was great because before I had OCD, I really enjoyed touching their fur and having them close to me. So it's really nice to be able to do that. Really nice.
The challenge with somebody who has emetophobia, and this is a big problem, is that exposure therapy, to actually confront the thing that you fear, it would mean to, make yourself vomit. About 10 years ago, I went to a cognitive behavioral therapist. I had gone probably 25 plus years without vomiting. And she said, look, the only way you're going to get over this is if you actually make yourself vomit. And the only way to do that is to take, Ipecac, which is an emetic, which will make you do this. And for months, I said, no. And finally I said, yes. I took 2 doses of Ipecac, felt horribly nauseous, intensely anxious, spent much of a day lying in the floor of this public restroom, kind of weeping and, just, sort of in paroxysm of anxiety. I feel slightly anxious even thinking about it now. After some point, I passed from thinking, okay, I want to get this over with as quickly as possible, to thinking, I can't deal with this, I need to avoid this. And I actually succeeded in, avoiding getting sick. But my poor therapist, who spent the day with me in this public restroom, she called me later in the afternoon to say, how are you doing? Are you okay? And she reported that seeing me kind of dry heaving and failing to vomit had made her so nauseous that she threw up. So the Ipecac that I took made someone else sick and yet was totally unsuccessful in making me throw up, or needless to say, helping me get over my anxiety over this. My therapists always say that I'm more resilient than I know myself to be, and they are always pointing to say, look, you have a job, you've managed to have a family, you've managed to stay employed for 25 years. But the reality is, I am probably more resilient than I know, and that even when I'm, after suffering from a panic attack or having longer periods of kind of breakdown or quasi-breakdown, I'm able to recover from that and continue to thrive and recover. When I set out to research the history of anxiety, obviously I looked to the major, theorists and historians and scientists of anxiety, and that included everyone going back to, the 4th century BC, Hippocrates, the ancient Greek physician, Sigmund Freud and William James and Charles Darwin. All of those guys suffered from fairly acute anxiety. I mean, Sigmund Freud, he's been discredited in a lot of ways, but he was seen as this sort of Olympian figure who would pronounce on other people's anxiety. He himself was riddled with train phobia. He couldn't ride a train without, acute anxiety. Charles Darwin, he went on the famous voyage of the Beagle, came back, and from that point forward, after kind of collecting all this data that he used to develop his theory of evolution, could barely leave his home in rural England because any little bit of stress would provoke him to, days of, being bedridden. He actually built a contraption that would allow him to see via a set of mirrors if people were coming down the driveway to his studio so that he could hide. It's amazing to me that he lived to age 70 and that was able to write on the origins of species and the descent of man and all these other books because he was so riven by anxiety. Vladimir Horowitz, probably the greatest concert pianist of the 20th century, he went years and years without performing at all because his stage fright was just so acute. And when he finally agreed to go back on stage, the condition was always that he could see his personal physician in the front row of the audience in case he had a heart attack or some major panic attack. So to me, it was somewhat consoling to read that all of these famous, brilliant people, much more accomplished than I am or ever will be, were also subject to this.
For me, it was realizing that I created the anxiety, conditioned it with poor, negative, irrational thinking and a low self-esteem, and if I can build that, I can get better. I wanted to take the victim out of it. I created this panic attack. I created it by the way I thought. So, I just said, if I created it, why can't I decondition it and condition something else? Chose to go into sales to kind of put myself into the fire, kind of my best form of exposure therapy. The first couple years at the sales job were horrible, and a lot of it was barraging myself with negative, harsh self-judgment, self-talk. Well, I got this presentation. What if I do this and I fall apart and have a panic attack? I monitored my self-talk. I wrote all the negative thoughts down. But I also try to program very positive thoughts on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. I wrote a journal of positive thoughts from Vince Lombardi, from Winston Churchill, never, 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 never surrender to the seemingly overwhelmingly might of the enemy. And I just indoctrinated myself with these thoughts. For hours on end, I did breathing techniques every night, and then I visualized success. I would say, going to work every day, I can do it. So I over-prepared. I stayed up till 4 a.m. and I read my sales brochures and practiced with my dad. And after 4 or 5 or 6 years of that, it started to kick in. I ended up being the #1 sales guy in the whole country.
Why did you go on The Bachelorette?
That was the Everest for me at the time. I didn't do it to meet a girl and get married. It's not what I was there for. Crux of it was throwing myself into spots that were extremely uncomfortable and feeling that nervousness, feeling the anxiety. What if I go on The Bachelorette and have a panic attack and break down crying, 15 cameras on me and a whole 40 crew of people, and having the whole world watch you, battling through it? To me, that's growth.
But I'm fascinated. You were telling me, because you are a writer, and you're writing a book on panic attacks and social phobias.
When I was 19, I was just talking to somebody and had a panic attack. After The Bachelorette, Oprah and Diane Sawyer and Connie Chung and all these people interviewing me about anxiety, actually, but that helped more than anything. Just getting used to always talking to people. Those experiences were the best therapy that I could pay for.
Exposure therapy worked very well for me.
Every day now, no matter how uncomfortable I get, I am going for a drive. I don't care if it's to the corner right here. I will never, ever allow myself to get to the point where I cannot drive. I may not be able to drive far right now. I may not be able to do a lot of things now at this point, but I'm in therapy, and that's the first step. And I'm doing, honestly, the best that I can.
One of the cruelest parts of having a problem like this, you have this other little being in your head. Because it lives in your head, it has access to everything you know. It is as smart as you are. It knows you inside and out. It knows what you're vulnerable to and what you're not, so it knows exactly how to press your buttons. So how do you fight an enemy that's smarter than you and knows you completely? That's tough.
How many people, raise your hand if you would say there are times where you 100% believe whatever your OCD tells you is true?
At times, yeah, most people. Mm-hmm.
That's why they're so compelling. You know, if you never thought they were true, you could dismiss them. Just because you believe it to be true doesn't necessarily make it a completely rational fear.
When you have a panic attack or any anxiety attack, you're basically responding to something that's making you anxious. And in response, you're either getting ready to fight that thing, run away from that thing, or stay put until it goes away by itself. The best response is the last thing that you'd naturally do, and that is to embrace it. We call that exposure. Go toward it, conquer the fear by experiencing it. Doing the scary thing and not giving into the safety maneuver is what exposure and response prevention therapy is all about.
Often it's a collection of people who have been dealing with this for a very, very long time, and they're saying, you know, I've tried everything and nothing works. It's true that many people go through a whole litany of approaches to treatment and nothing works, but eventually many of them will find that something does.
Parents can make sure that their kids don't develop anxiety disorders, even if you have one as a parent, by modeling exposure for your kids. If you model for them, oh, I'm afraid I have to get away, that's what they're going to learn. If you model for them, oh, I'm afraid, let's go pursue it, that's what they're going to learn.
It's not like we're all huggy, touchy-feely, or anything like that. We're not. But just knowing that there are 10 to 15 other people in that room that have similar problems than you it's really helpful.
One of the ways that this group helps me is that when I hear other people say what their worries are, they seem so silly to me that that thought then just turns around, and I realize that the things that I worry about must seem silly to other people, and that realization helps.
It's very difficult, I think, for people on the outside to not be dismissive, because it does sound so silly when I say the things that come out of my mouth about my anxiety, but I truly believe it at the time.
Most friends of people who have anxiety, you know, they're always very well-meaning, and they say, oh, well, just, you know, suck it up, or ignore it, or calm down. Well, or, you know, I get anxious sometimes, and I take a warm bath, and then I'm fine. Well, if people with anxiety disorders, if we could just, and not that warm baths don't help, but if we could just calm down, or if we could just take a warm bath, and then we would be fine, we would not, you know, have anxiety disorders.
Anyone dealing with a spouse or a loved one that has anxiety, be utmost patience and caring for them, and just try to understand what they're going through.
To look past all the OCD BS and see the person inside, and there's lots of things about a person besides their mental illness.
Learning about it, asking the person how it makes them feel that day and what you can do to help. As an anxious person, it's nice to hear that you have someone that says, what can I do for you? And you're like, wow, probably nothing, but I'm super happy you asked me.
I do have a wonderful support system. It is great. I've called maybe 6 of my sisters today.
I think being in a positive relationship keeping busy with kids is helping to distract me. When you have too much time on your hands as an anxiety sufferer, that is probably the worst thing that can ever happen.
I call it the devil. I let the devil take over my entire life. When it said, don't go out today, I listened to it. When it said, you're not working anymore, I listened to it. And I would not recommend that for anybody. I don't care if you go to work and have 50 panic attacks. Have 50 panic attacks at work because it's not dangerous. Do not stop your life.
Seek help. There are lots of resources out there, whether it's through your primary care physician or through going online to nonprofit organizations like the ADAA, which is the Anxiety and Depression Association of America. They can help you find help.
The anxieties are one of the most treatable groups of problems, both behaviorally and with medication. So if you're having anxiety, you don't have to live with it. You really can get it treated.
Which is to the count of 15. Once I get it all on. You're not supposed to rub it in. It's just let it dry on its own, so.
It was quite apparent that it was a mental problem and that we needed to find someone to help her, because I certainly couldn't.
I don't want to sit in that armchair for the rest of my life. It was a matter of life and death, really. I wasn't going to kill myself, but I felt dead. I wanted to get better and have a life, but it was very anxiety-provoking to just decide to work on the exposure therapy because I knew what I was going to have to do. The first time I took my gloves off, I felt very panicky. I felt like I couldn't touch anything, the chair, myself, my clothes. I set the timer and waited an hour, and then the intensity of having to wash my hands was a lot less.
When she first took off her gloves, I can't put it into words. It was just so happy for her.
It was really hard work. I would say it took me about 6 months before I could touch certain things without washing my hands right away.
Slowly. It was a very slow process.
It probably took another 2 years to be able to touch everything except the bathroom. Now I'm able to put facial lotion on my face and makeup and brush my teeth without using a wipe around the toothbrush.
I think all of her anxieties are there that she had before. I just think she's able to work through them now better with the help that she's gotten.
When I finally got a specialist in OCD, it was a whole new ballgame. I don't think about germs very often anymore, at least once or twice a day. But compared to 24/7, that's a big improvement. I was so consumed with the obsessive thoughts and the rituals that I couldn't really come out of myself. And now I can think about other things. I teach in the technology department at the Braille Institute. I can touch the keyboards. I was able to shake somebody's hand when they became a citizen, which I couldn't do before. And so that was really special to me. Before I felt very insecure, very frightened all the time. And now I only feel frightened when there's real danger. I have a life. Now I can do pretty much anything I want to do. And I feel really happy.
My number of actual emergency room visits, hasty doctor appointments, as I like to call them, has reduced. Probably because I am trying to seek help. I'm actively seeking help, and I am on I'm actively taking medication for it.
We're kind of in this together. People that have gotten better should help the people that are now suffering, and then those people are going to get better, and it's kind of a team in a way.
5,000 people I have spoken to in the last 6 years, and they have all said thank you for me that they're better because they watch my videos or they feel safe because I did this. And if I don't make a print in this world with this disorder, then something is wrong because I think that everybody needs to be aware of what's going on.
My hope is that the more information we get out there and the more we talk to people is that the stigma will be reduced and more people will understand and be understanding of and empathic of someone else's experience. Someone yelling in the store, you might maybe see them differently, like maybe think about, you know what, maybe they have generalized anxiety disorder and they really don't know how to handle life right now and that's why they're yelling. Like maybe they're suffering with something more than you can see.
When I touched you during the interview 5 years ago, I think my arm brushed on your elbow and you ran to the bathroom and did like a 30-minute ritual. Are you now well enough for me to give you a hug?
Yes.
Okay, let me give you a hug because I'm really proud of you.
Thank you.
Wow, that's amazing. That's really neat.
I always thought Lori would get better. You have to believe that. You have to believe